All right, so today we're going to be picking up with something new. It's a new coverage that we're going to be doing on this channel, and it is the new ongoing Captain America run by none other than Chip Zdarsky. I know we were supposed to keep doing our JMS Spider-Man run stuff, and we are going to, but I wanted to take a little second to at least cover the first issue of Captain America, which is part one of a story arc called Our Secret War. And it's interesting in regards to how it sets up Captain America for this newfound age, because there's a little bit of retconning, and we'll get into it. I think it's retconning. I might be wrong, but the story opens up with this kid. He's just this short kid, red hair and glasses, and he's just watching 9/11 happen. And I know in my last video, I wasn't really going to talk about 9/11, and this one doesn't go into it deeply, but this book is reactionary consequence of 9/11 and how different the Iraq War is to World War II, and we're going to get into that. But it's this kid, and he's seemingly, his future self is monologuing this moment of him watching 9/11 occur, and he's talking about how, like, you think you're prepared for death when you're as alone as you've ever been, and he finally ends his internal monologue with, am I willing to be a killer? And that's when you get into Captain America. Steve Rogers, American man, is in a diner, and he's ordering food and he's eating food, and he's sitting there in his full costume, but he's doing the classic Captain America thing from the 80s and stuff like that, where he's just wearing a trench coat over his costume. And they're listening to the news is on, but the waitress is also talking to a couple other people. They're just chatting about like how New York is changing, it's not like the old days, and she's on the other side of that spectrum where she's just like, no, the old days weren't even as good, like you're playing it up, there was no good old days. And then brings up an interesting point where she says, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. But what if you're at peace? And that's whenever a cop in the diner gets a call. Captain America overhears the call, and Captain America's out by going over to the scene nearby where this woman is trying to hold on to her partner, who is like clinging to life after getting shot. And he reveals it's Captain America's star on his chest, gets on his motorcycle and races off after the guy. And that's whenever we get into Steve's internal monologue. And Steve is like, being very analytical about it. He's like one lone gunman on a bike. He's going, I'm chasing after him. He's shooting at me. He's trained. He knows how to ride and fire. And he's starting to think that like maybe this guy is military, but he does, some insane Captain America moves, getting his bike on top of a car, getting above him and throwing the shield. It's a really cool sequence, but the guy ends up getting off of after getting hit with the shield, he falls off of his bike and starts running, and it's revealed he runs to the UN building. And at the UN building, he's talking about blowing up the UN building in New York, and Captain America basically just talk no jutsus him. He sits him down. He's like, yo, you were clearly a soldier because you know how to shoot and all this stuff. I'm a captain. I was in the Commandos Infantry, World War II. What were you? He was just like, what's your rank? And he was like, Army, second lieutenant, 2 tours in the Gulf. But when he reveals that he's Captain America, the guy doesn't believe it. And this is where it starts to get kind of weird. And he basically talks him down, and it gets weird because the next page, Iron Man shows up, but it's not like current modern Iron Man. It's like Stan Lee, Jack Kirby Iron Man, but in the modern day. So it seems like Chip Zdarsky, what he's doing is like kind of updating Steve's origins, not like going through and retelling the entire origin, but more so going through and updating it for modern times by being like, Steve woke up today. This is what Steve is doing today. And it seems to be canon in the main Marvel universe. I might be wrong. Hopefully someone in the comments just fucking screams at me. But no, and so Tony shows up after the bomber stands down, and Steve was going to disarm the bomb, but Iron Man remotely disarmed it in his armor. And they have an interesting conversation where he's talking about wanting Steve to be part of the Avengers. Like, so this is early days Avengers. This is back whenever Steve wasn't part of the team, and it was Iron Man, Thor, sometimes Hulk, even though Hulk was like a villain in the very beginning, Ant-Man and the Wasp, and they're all talking about it, and he's like not fully there yet, not really ready to join the Avengers, and the implication is that like it's been like a couple of weeks to a month that the Avengers thought him out, and he's unsure of his place in the world because he's a man at a time. He just showed up basically in this retcon period for Steve, because in the original comic book, Steve, when he immediately woke up and came out the ice, he just joined off rip. Like he was like, oh, we're fighting a bad guy, cool, I'll join you guys, I'll help you guys. And And here, Steve is very much like I don't know what I'm doing, and it's time to figure that out. So he does what he thinks is his only choice, and he goes back to the military. He goes back to base. And that's whenever we pick up back with that kid who saw 9/11. I'm assuming it's still like early 2000s for this kid because it's shortly thereafter, and he's standing in Times Square. There is a banner, like an American flag banner, that's like in the middle of Times Square over there by the steps. But this is pre the steps because it's the 2000s. And over there, that's wherever you get apparently that is an Army recruitment office, and he's just standing outside the Army recruitment office, just standing there waiting, and he's not going home until they admit him into the Army because he seemingly is of age. He seems to be 18, but they're just like, no, we can't, like, you have asthma, you flunked out twice, like, you're not, like, you have asthma, you have like other disabilities, all this stuff, we can't accept you. And in the shutters, because it's a window looking through, it's this old man, and he's starting to seem like he gets this idea. But then we cut back to Captain America, and Captain America is doing gymnastics and acrobatics and all this fucking combat training and all this stuff because they need to verify if it is Steve Rogers back from the dead, frozen in suspended animation. But he's doing it in the Pentagon in Washington, and their analysts are telling this guy who it's a cool reveal. It's a cool reveal that this person showed up, but they're telling this guy, they're like, no, it is him. He was just frozen in suspended animation. It's kind of insane, and it's revealed to be Thunderbolt Thaddeus Ross. And that's sick. And Thunderbolt Ross is kind of just like, why are you here? Like, you have a costume. You could just go be a superhero. What are you actively doing here? And Steve is kind of just like, I don't know. It's been a week. I'm confused. I don't even know what I'm doing here, but it's juxtaposed his response with Bucky throwing him off of the missile and him seemingly perishing, which we know now he didn't. He became Winter Soldier, but since it's a retcon time period, he doesn't know that yet. On the spot, as a result of that, Thunderbolt Ross just re-enlists him into the United States Armed Forces immediately. And then we cut back to the kid, and they're being really cagey with his name. Like, we still don't know his name at this point, but we know that he had a brother who died and his name was Brian, but he's now in the military. Seemingly the guys over at the Army recruitment office took pity and finally admitted him. And as he's going through this, he's still scrawny, he's still a kid. So it's very much like the story of Steve Rogers, but in regards to the modern day lens of like Afghanistan, Iraq, the war on terror, all this stuff. And he's on the phone talking to his mom, and his mom is just like, you're not thinking straight, come home. Your brother died, how could you even think about doing this? And he's like, no, my brother was a hero. And then he has to get off the phone because he's getting bullied by other people in the barracks. And it's kind of fucked up what happens next, because they're in combat training and they just beat his ass, like in ways that like are like that just suck. He's just getting his ass beat. And afterwards we cut back to seemingly this time period with Captain America, and it's the Fantastic Four fighting a big monster in New York, and Captain America helps out. Come to find out the big monster was being controlled by Mole Man, and it's just a fun moment. But then he needs to go talk to Reed. So Reed and Steve go to a bar and they're talking about Victor Von Doom because Thunderbolt Ross is about to send him on a mission in which he has to go stop Dr. Doom in Latveria. And Reed initially offers up the help of the Fantastic Four, being like, of course we'll help you. It's our villain anyways. And Steve is like, I don't need your help. I don't need the Fantastic Four's help. And he can't even, and like Fantastic Four can't even get involved because they're American citizens. But really what he needs his help for is figuring out what is Dr. Doom, and furthermore trying to figure out his whole place in all of this. And he even asked Reed outright, is this fate? Am I here to stop the next Hitler before he starts, implying that Victor is Hitler, is the next Hitler. And Reed is just like, no, he's not Hitler. He's a dick, but like he's a humanitarian for the most part. Like he just has a lot of baggage with him. And that's whenever some people come over and they're just like, oh my god, you're Mr. Fantastic, but he does a trick with his face to make him look like somebody else, and he goes, nah, I'm just some guy, man, like you're wrong. And we cut to them walking outside, and while they're walking outside they have a funny moment where Steve is just like, wow, that's an interesting trick. That was cool. And Reed then gives like another great explanation for the Fantastic Four's celebrity. He says that like the four of us opted not to have secret identities. For Ben it's impossible, Sue can just turn invisible, Johnny loves the attention, I'm probably the shyest, so I called myself Mr. Fantastic as like an ironic thing. And because of the nature of his powers, he can just disappear whenever he is shy and doesn't want to talk to people. But it's another continuation of that idea that was proliferated in, I believe, Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four run. I might might be wrong. Editor Jeffrey will yell at me if I am wrong. But there's a really cool moment where Reed is telling the origin story of the Fantastic Four to his daughter, and he's saying that, like, oh, once upon a time ago, there were 4 people who went off into space and got powers, and then he stops himself after seeing an image of the 4 of them looking normal, and he goes, once upon a time, one really intelligent person made a really stupid decision and cost the lives of his best friends. And so it's a kind of continuation of that, but as they're moving on from that, they're still talking about how Doom has like an ego and like that's his weakness and all this stuff. And Reed reveals, like, he calls him Captain, and Steve is just like, please just call me Steve. Like, you shouldn't have to call me Captain. And he's like, I understand on some level that, like, you kind of just want to be a guy, and that, like, for you a week ago, like, you were in World War II, but like for us, we've worshipped you for this entire time. Like, you're 90% of the reason why we're all superheroes. And he reveals that he has a Captain America action figure that he carries around. And they're talking about this action figure and how he's like the brave man, the one who helps, the one who fights evil wherever it lives, and apologizes to him for everything he's lost. But Reed is so happy that Steve is here because his hero that he's looked up to since he was 8 is here. And Steve has a really sweet moment where he just goes, that's cool that they made action figures of me. Did they make action figures of Bucky? And Reed's response is, damn right they did. Now, we're cutting back to this kid, and holy fuck, when I read this, I cringed. I felt so bad. I feel so bad for this kid. Jesus Christ. Anyways, this kid is reading like Captain America's seemingly memoir, probably written by like Peggy or whatever. And the CEO is standing in the hallway and he's just like, sorry, sir, I know. And he just grabs this kid and drags him out into the pouring rain of this army base. And it's just like, you're a fucking mistake. You're an embarrassment. And just savagely beats the shit out of this kid to the point that, like, this kid is just like, it's fucked up. Like, he just gets up again after getting punched in the face. He goes, and I'm not leaving. And they're fighting and the sergeant's beating his ass. And he keeps getting up saying, I'm never going to leave. I'm never going to leave. And then from that fucked up traumatic experience, we cut back to Steve, who is at a museum that is about him, basically. And like, they have all these letters and he talks about, he's like, my life on display. Every letter I wrote home to my old teacher. And then the whole idea of like his own memoir, again, the same book that the kid was reading in the barracks. And this nice lady comes up and she's just like, hey, we're closing soon. He's like, it's fine. Of course, I understand. And then he goes and he's trying to figure out, like, what the fuck is he doing? Like, what's the point of all of this? Like, why am I doing this? And that's like kind of his whole get down with this issue. We cut back to the kid, and this kid is reaching for his inhaler after being hospitalized from the beating he just took. And someone else helps him and he reaches for it and he's able to get it. And it's seemingly this general who shows up, and we find out that his name is David Colton. And he said that you are the weakest damn recruit I've ever witnessed, but I could cure that asthma. And then we cut back to Steve, and with Steve, he is talking to Thunderbolt Ross, and they're about to invade Doomstot and all this stuff. And he has this really cool redesign for like a stealth suit. It kind of reminds me of the Winter Soldier stealth suit that he had whenever they were raiding the boat with S.H.I.E.L.D. But they're talking about Dr. Doom and how he has a contact in Latveria that he's going to go meet with and all this stuff. And so then he meets the rest of his crew. And his crew's name is a man named Terry Mendoza Chill and a woman named Julie Slate. And they're all together, and then another person shows up with the Captain America shield, and it's David fucking Colton, who underwent the seemingly super soldier serum. And that's the end of the first issue. Now, I really like this run. I've read up so far to like issue 5, but I just wanted to talk about the first issue, and it's really good. I really like this book so far. Chip Zdarsky, he's fucking amazing. You know, he wrote the Daredevil run. He wrote one of my favorite Spider-Man comic books that we're going to cover on this channel, Spider-Man Life Story. Holy shit, what an amazing book. But yeah, no, I just wanted to talk about this single issue, Captain America, Our Secret Wars Part 1. And yeah, because I'm in the midst of like helping people move and all that stuff, I haven't really been that active. We posting shorts and stuff like that. But no, for the most part, that's it. Shouts out Editor Jeffrey, like I always do at the end of every video of mine. And I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.